I'll start with Greg because he's right on my screen and I'll pull everybody else up here.
So I'm Greg Bernard. I'm the Director of Programs out here at Rebuilding Together Peninsula. We help clients with minor home repairs throughout San Mateo County.
Do you have a counterpart in Santa Clara County?
We do with Rebuilding Together, Silicon Valley, and
Okay.
Glen,
Okay.
Petaluma, etc.
Okay. And there's Araceli. And how about Marty?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Marty Estrada. I'm the Director for Community Development here in South County, Gilroy, California, but agency by the name of Community Agency for Resources, Advocacy, and Services. Let me pass it on to Jenny.
Well, hello there. I'm Jenny Campbell, and I am just transitioning in to partner with Marcia and the team at Cadre. And I'll be working with Marcia specifically right now until we determine differently tomorrow on our scope on long-term recovery.
Yay.
Marcia, do you want me to say really quickly where I'm from and kind of
Sure.
background?
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
I've got the elevator pitch down, so it's not too long, but and I'm sorry, you guys, I'm going to go on camera, but bear with me. I have a worker here unexpectedly in the house, so I'm do-si-doing with my refrigerator right now. So I currently live in Agoura Hills, California. That might sound familiar only because that's where the Woolsey fire jumped the 101 freeway 6 years, almost 5.5 years ago. And I am from Northern California. I have lived in Southern for over 20 years, unexpectedly. And I fell into the position of being the long-term recovery group chair for our community. And we developed our community recovery organization alongside that and stood up or revived our VOAD at the same time, because our VOAD is called ENLA, Emergency Network Los Angeles. And we hadn't had a disaster here in so long that it was very quiet. And we weren't quite ready for the Woolsey. So I sit on the board of our VOAD down here. I'm currently the executive director for LARCRO, which is that community recovery organization that stood up because of the Woolsey. And I'm in blue sky with that. And I'm looking for the next place that I can hopefully bring my background in corporate and my passion for disaster. So Marcia and I connected, and here I am.
It was meant to be.
Marcia, I'll let you do the handoff.
Thank you. Araceli, let's go to you next.
Hi, everybody. Araceli Gonzalez. I work for Catholic Charities, and I have been part of Cadre for seven years now. 6 years, 6 years, yeah. Started as secretary, then moved up to co-chair. Now I chair. And then I've always been part of long-term recovery camp. And what we've been doing is since 2017, as far as the case management and long-term recovery, reported out on all the floods in 2017, the wildfires in 2020, and now the floods in 2023.
Yep. We're getting too much experience. We need to stop that. How about Alicia?
Hi, my name is Alicia Garcia. I apologize. For some reason, my camera is not working. But I am from We Hope in East Palo Alto. We Hope stands for We Help Other People Excel, and we deal with issues facing homelessness. We have about 20 case managers on our team. Many of them are outreach case managers that go directly out to the fields and other places where the homeless congregate. And then we have our Dignity on Wheels, which is mobile showers and laundry service that serves 5 counties and 22 cities throughout the Bay Area.
Thank you for being here. Daniela.
Hi, everyone. My name is Daniela. I actually work under Araceli with disaster programs. I am the disaster program lead with Catholic Charities of Santa Clara County. So currently working with families that were impacted by the 2023 storms here in Santa Clara.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think she forgot to share, we're also co-partnering with Catholic Charities of Monterey, and she's assisting 3 different grants out there as well. So she has staff that are working doing long-term case management with 4 counties as well.
Okay. Let me see here. Jeremy.
Hi, everybody. Jeremy Bruce, Director of Policy and Organizing with Amigos de Guadalupe, Center for Justice and Empowerment. We are a place-based agency based in East San Jose. We serve about 2,000 East San Jose families per year through our 7 different programs and services. And we're really glad to be part of the ecosystem here with Cadre. So,
Thank you. We're glad you're part of it too. Michael. Michael Rios. You're on mute.
Hi, yeah, sorry, I was on mute. Hi, my name is Michael. I am a case manager for We Hope in East Palo Alto.
Oh, great.
Sorry.
Thank you. Nice to have a couple of you on. Sue.
Talking to myself here. So I'm Sue Troutman. I'm with the American Red Cross. In a regular basis, I'm the recovery coordinator for the Silicon Valley chapter, where we follow up with clients who have had house fires and other smaller scale disasters. And in the disaster area, I hold 2 positions as a recovery manager and a shelter resident transition manager. So those are 2 different prongs that use the long-term the resources from long-term recovery. So we would be working with shelter residents to help them transition out of the shelters to a sustainable solution. And in the recovery, it would be working with the community partners to transition the disaster back to the partners in the area.
Glad you're here too. That's a good group. Winter. Did I say it right?
Hi, my name's Winter Wright, and I'm a case manager at Project We Hope in East Palo Alto.
No, I love the spelling of your name.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so that's who we have right now. And I'm Marcia Hovey. I'm the executive director of Cadre. And Cadre has a new vision this year. And part of it is it's connecting all of Santa Clara County by function. And we're calling them support networks. But instead of you having, I mean, you all have networks of people that you work with. We want to expand it so that we have a county-wide database of who's doing what in Santa Clara County. It's going to be on a map. The services will be shared. Each support network will have a password protected website on the Cadre website, so that during a disaster you can share information there. We're going to try to create some live forms and things that you can enter activities right after disaster happens. And pre-disaster, we want to, talk through the planning process and make sure everyone knows everyone, so that we can be as resilient as possible just because we know everybody. And so we will only meet, right now, we've kind of randomly said we'll meet quarterly. We may need to accelerate that, but it's really up to you. But when we've tried to do this in the past, we've always kind of relied on a member of our board of directors to run it, and they don't have time. No, you all have jobs. So the purpose of this is to get the planning done without you having to do a lot of extra work. So that means that you will have a staff support person that will arrange the meetings and talk with whoever the current leadership is, and you can take turns being the lead and we'll jointly identify what it is we want to discuss at these quarterly meetings, how we're going to communicate before a disaster and during a disaster. Did somebody just say something?
Why you laugh? I'm being serious. I like to see
Michael?
play, you know what I mean?
Michael? I'm going to put you on mute. Okay. So staff will support it. They will keep the database up until we can figure out how to make it be a live database that you can update yourself for your organization. During a disaster, we'll already be connected. And so we'll be able to share information with you so that you know what's coming up next. And so case management is kind of the biggest piece of long-term recovery early on. And so we brought you together first, but the goal is that with Jenny's help now, and for those of you that missed her, Jenny Campbell is now on staff with Cadre, and she has a lot of experience. She's running the long-term recovery for the Woolsey fire in Southern California. And so she's going to help us develop a long-term recovery framework, because typically what happens after a disaster, of course, nobody expected it to happen. And so we didn't really plan to that degree. It's like, okay, yes, we'll have to do long-term recovery. So then it happens and we're all sitting on the Zoom or at a table going, okay, now what? So the goal is that we know that a long-term recovery group needs certain key players at the table, needs some bylaws, needs a code of conduct, and whatever Jenny tells us, because she's already gone through this. And we have a couple, because we have the VisionLink software that that supports disaster case management. And we're using it in Santa Cruz, and we're using it in Humboldt County, and wow, how did I just forget that we've supported 4, but so I've been sitting in and watching people create their long-term recovery groups. In Santa Cruz, it took them a year after the SCU fire to stand up long-term recovery. And I would like Santa Clara County to be able to start that process in 30 days. So so we'll identify who intends to be a player in long-term recovery, and that could be case management, which is a big one, and then it goes on for a long time. The recovery could be months to years, depending on how big it is. And that big earthquake, it's going to be years. And so we have to figure out how we're going to fund the people, how we can, do we have the ability to increase capacity of case managers quickly, or how will that look? And I know Araceli has some experience with that. How do we fund the case managers? And then who else needs to be at the table? There's people that do cleanup. We've got Rebuilding Together here. They do some rebuilding. We've got Habitat for Humanity and others that can help with that. We'll have housing needs, financial needs, every need in the book. There'll be an unmet needs committee. So the types of things that aren't always immediately provided to the community, we can work together to try to solve those problems. We're going to involve members of there's some interreligious councils, interfaith councils in the county that can help us with the unmet needs portion. And I've never had to run long-term recovery. So I'm here learning it with all of you. So if I ask stupid questions, I'll learn from that. So we're all allowed to learn in this. And if you have experience from being in other counties and doing this, then we'll take every bit of information and lessons learned that you have, because we want it to be as easy as possible for all of us. So, so as far as the case management being its own committee, I think, we can decide how much information how much information do the case management folks need on a yearly basis. related to preparedness, or is it, or are you just part of the long-term recovery discussion? You know, and how, because we have a lot of organizations that do case management, but maybe they're not all going to be able to do more case management or long-term. So it's like, in the short term, how do we allow that support, and then how do folks step back? And that's all, you know, it's all up for discussion, which is why we want everyone to be at the table, so that every voice is heard. It doesn't matter how big or small your organization is, that if you want to be part of the disaster recovery, we want to figure out how to have you be in that space, because we want everyone to get the experience, and we want to all work as a team, because that's what builds resilience in Santa Clara County. Any questions about that? I mean, that's a lot. We're building a capability that hasn't existed before. I don't know how long it's going to take. And there's Jenny popped up, so I'll let her talk, because that's why she's popping on her screen, I'm sure.
That's why I'm risking letting you see my refrigerator, everybody. Hi. You know, Marcia, yes, exactly. And I think that some key pieces, the key piece, just me not having enough context right now, you know, so I don't want to speak too much until I wrap my head around, you know, Santa Clara and understand a little bit more. But one of the things I think that's really important, just to loop in with all of the good information Marcia is providing, is long-term recovery and disaster case management. The key is that someone gets funding. Let's just say it's Catholic Charities, right? We had Catholic Charities down here, but we also had 9 other agencies, to include Tzu Chi, Salvation Army. I mean, you name it, Jewish Family Services, everybody got a little funding. And how do we serve the community the best? And disaster case management is much different than case management, right? Because you've got your time limited on DCM. And I know Catholic Charities, if I could see you, you'd all be nodding your head. And anybody else who does disaster case management, I don't mean to leave anybody out, but I don't know the county yet. So my point in just bringing this up is to keep in our heads that the community drives the recovery. Okay. And so when I say that, what I mean is that we have to, on the front end, have to start bringing the community in and finding those leaders, the ones like me who got caught by FEMA and dragged in to run the LTRG. We've now taken that and we've created an organization that is 365, 24/7 and Blue Sky funded, just so that we're ready and can mentor LTRGs as they need to stand up. So the 2 pieces that I just wanted to add in, because there's so much more, is just remember that the community is what drives that recovery. And so when you're talking about disaster case management, there may be funding for, say, 14 months under the DCMP, the Disaster Case Management Program, which is FEMA funded and then trickles down through the state and the counties. That might be a short period of time, but that's nowhere near as long as we need. And so what we need is during that time frame to be standing up our local DCMs, which is you know, your community groups, the local community groups that can stay with this. And then the larger national organizations can move to getting ready for the next thing, the next disaster, which could hit us any second. So I just wanted to make sure I said that, is like, have our heads thinking about that community and who we know and how we can find those leaders. And then who are our churches, local churches and school teachers and counseling groups that might be able to come forward and start training under maybe the federally funded group. Maybe it's Catholic Charities that gets the money, or Jewish Family Services or whatever, but then they step away after a number of months and hand off to this other group. So that's kind of the next piece. I'll zip it now.
Yeah, so so next month, I know that we promised quarterly, but we got some funding, which is why Jenny's here. Next month, we're going to do it. We call it a symposium. We're going to do a 2-part meeting for long-term recovery, and it'll be more than just the case managers. We're going to try to to bring in the, you know, the people that we're identifying as the big players, and then the others that maybe have not been part of a disaster before that want to learn. So Jenny will do a Zoom, we'll do part of it by Zoom, like an orientation to long-term recovery. And then I'm hoping like a week or two later, we will meet in person and try to start the process of crafting the vision of what we want long-term recovery to look like. Does that sound right? Because I don't want to do everything on Zoom, but, you know, try to maximize your time. So the information sharing we'll do on Zoom, but then in person, we need to know each other, because when that thing happens, we all need to know how tall we are. Because you can't tell that from Zoom, and it's hard to keep track of how tall people are and how do I identify you besides your face. So thoughts about that, because this is a meeting. This isn't a training. This is a discussion about long-term recovery, and what do you hope to get from this, or, you know, what can you contribute to this? Because I know you have a lot of experience here. We've got the Red Cross, how Red Cross works, you know, and I think it's how long does Red Cross work? You know, because there is, I think, Sue, correct me if I'm wrong, that there is a time frame, like for when you're doing individual case work, like for a house fire, then you help them get back to normal. But in a disaster that's running for years, you're not part of that anymore. Is that right?
Well, for example, it depends on the situation. We are currently still in Hawaii. And what they've done is we still have caseworkers working with people in the shelters, attempting to get them placed into, you know, their homes. Some of them it's for rebuilding. Some of them need, you know, job employment. Others need to get off the island. And what the Red Cross has done at this point in time is they've hired local people to do a lot of the continuing work. And I mean, it's a very unique situation. And so it really is disaster dependent, but we do, one of the things that we have been doing is standing up long-term recovery at the beginning of the disaster, so that we can better connect with community resources and build better relationships to help generate those opportunities. And there is some funding. I know that in one of the fires, for example, they do some short-term funding within the disaster from the long-term recovery to solve a particular problem. So they, you know, they're flexible. It's just in knowing, you know, it's just creating that relationship that's really important. And all of those things go through our external relations and the job directors.
Okay.
So
that sounds, so you help them stand up long-term recovery. Is that because they were too overwhelmed?
no, so the long-term recovery actually has in Hawaii. So when Hawaii first started, it was the long-term recovery people that were doing a lot of the community resourcing. So they have, and they were doing different, they have done some funding of a particular, like, let's say there was a group of people that needed to move into a tiny home. They could fund those people going into a tiny home with, you know, other agencies. So they can solve particular issues for, you know, a smaller group of people. Like in Florida, we were, there was some housing that we actually repaired it was through, I think it was with Habitat, and they repaired the homes, and then there was a group of people who could move into those. So those are the kinds of things that are done during the disaster timeframe. but we will eventually turn it over to the long-term recovery team, which I think we do some of the funding that is raised for the disaster will go to long-term recovery, and we will have representatives from the long-term recovery team.
Okay,
But that's different. So I forget who, I want to say Amanda Ree is the long-term recovery for some of the California fires, or she's in Hawaii now. But so that goes to, they're more paid positions.
mm-hmm,
And then they're assigned to particular disaster.
okay. Well,
And I'll augment, Sue, what you just said, just by saying, everyone, every disaster is so different, you know, every single one. And I can't emphasize that enough to everybody, whether you're national or local. When Sue talks about, you know, the initial response and recovery and then long-term recovery, they're very different, right? And the Red Cross is so exceptional at getting our funding enough to help the people through the recovery to get to long-term recovery. And then what happened, for example, with Woolsey, exactly what Sue said, is the Red Cross moved into long-term recovery mode and looked at what they could use the funding they had to help the most with, so that disaster case management could start. And what they did is they funded operationally, very specifically, leadership, because they knew that with leadership and with Presbyterian Disasters help with funding disaster case management, by the way, those two teamed together in order to fund me so that I could stay. I donated 6 months of my time, and then Red Cross knew I had to leave. And they came forward with FEMA and funded about 80% of a salary for me for a year, and then partnered with PDA, Presbyterian Disaster, to fund the 20%. And then we were able to rock disaster case management.
awesome. And Araceli, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, and just to add to that, with the conversations like these long-term recovery groups, it definitely helps the state advocate how fast we need to go up and running. So for instance, with the fire, it took us 1.5 years to even get a FEMA list. And that was a 2020. But here in the floods of 2023, because of the advocacy of the continuously conversation, case management, long-term recovery, we were able to go in there pretty quickly. And within months, we already had received the information. We were able to do, they advocated. So this, it helps these long-term recovery groups where we're building and getting that feedback to the state. So then that way the state could actually advocate for us. So this time around, the state says we're putting up front the money. Go ahead and let's start working. And then FEMA came right around within 2 months, which is what it, you know, unfortunately you learn per disaster and it gets better and better. But I mean, instead of waiting 1.5 years, you know, the FEMA just came in within 2 months after the state had already approved it.
Nice. Yeah, so yeah, I'm really excited that this is going to go well, because we have so much experience on what not to do on this call. And with Jenny leading it, I think we can actually get this going. Anybody have thoughts? Have any of you not ever been part of a disaster recovery? Okay. So, Jeremy, let me just ask you then, if, let's say a big earthquake happened, what do you expect would happen at Amigos right after it happens?
That's a good question. I think the kind of role that we would want to play is be able to, like, being in these type of spaces, is to get information out to our families and the communities, just get information out to them. And I don't know immediately after a disaster, what other type of role we could play. Is it like literally on the ground, search and rescue, or is it more these spaces more getting information about recovery services, information, Red Cross information, or some of the other bigger agencies that provide immediate relief. So yeah, and yeah, I think we are very kind of, on the ground type of agency. So I think there are a lot of different roles I foresee us being able to play with the families that we represent, that we serve.
Yeah, and that's really an important one, is that by being connected to this group, you are going to know all of the available resources and get that information to the people that you work with. Do you expect that any of them might come to your door and say,
Sure.
can't get back in our house?
Absolutely, because we are place-based. We're right in the middle of the community, so
Yep.
people do that already about different issues and needs. So we probably will expect people coming to our doors after a big disaster.
And are you building a disaster hub? Is that you? Somebody was building like a community space. It's part of the Si Se Puede. Somebody within Si Se Puede was trying to get funding or got funding to build it like a disaster resilient space.
I don't think not us. We haven't applied for any funding for that, but I know Francie Collins has reached out, and we've kind of been putting together some stuff. Like we fill out some surveys about needing stuff in our language. Do we have a place with information? So kind of, but we're not building in an official hub.
Okay. Okay, that's good. And it's like just being all connected when it first happens, and we have to figure out how we keep that connection if the phones aren't working or the internet's not working, and be across these different support networks that we're building. Those questions come up a lot.
And Marcia, if I could add, Jeremy,
Yes.
one thing that is really helpful, because you have all the families that you're connected to, is getting them to do the application, whether it's funded or not, because then what happens is, as long as they get the application in and say it happened like this time, Santa Clara County was declared so late. So it's like pushing that word out just to get people comfortable and filling out that. Just being on the FEMA list is such key information. And that's kind of what we've always done from like the beginning. Doesn't matter, just put it in there. Because if it's in there, somebody will reach out to you.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, and so we can arrange for training on filling out the FEMA application so that everybody's more comfortable with it, and they are making it easier. We've just gotten notices that they've just streamlined it so that it's not so complicated, because it's incredibly frustrating to the individuals that apply, because guaranteed you're going to get rejected maybe 2 or 3 or 5 times and have to jump through a few more hoops and give them a little bit more information. And you've just been through a traumatic experience. Maybe you've lost your home, and it's like, do you even have the brain power to do that? So we do need the community to help them see that there's light at the end of the tunnel, but you have to be a pit bull. You have to, and I love pit bulls. I'm not saying that is a bad thing. You can't let FEMA win. Right.
And being part of the long-term recovery group, we're able to help troubleshoot with appeals, and that's where it gets more complicated, because a person gets a denial and they're like, oh, I forget it. No, don't lose it. When did you get it? Because we only have a short time frame to go ahead and do that appeal. And that's why we have the case managers to try to help you and support you and things like that. But if they don't even submit the application, or if they see it as a denial, there's a lot of Latinos that says, they told me once, no, I'm done. And it shouldn't be that way. So it's getting that information to them.
Yeah, and that's a really important piece that we just have to keep telling people, don't give up. You know, we're here to help you. You know, we've got your back, and just don't give up, because we want to get you everything that you're entitled to. And, you know, FEMA's just, they've got a screening process and they have details that they want, and we just have to, you know, get good at making sure that we, you know, how do we do that? And even among the case managers, if you do an appeal and it gets through, then share that with the other people. You know, this was the issue, and now, you know, now we have a good best practice to make it easier for the next ones that have to file that same appeal. Other thoughts?
Marty has his hand up. Marshall.
Marty, thank you.
So I have a couple questions and a concern.
Yeah.
Let me do it backwards. FEMA, they're not gonna fund folks that are not documented. So I have a problem with that. A lot of the folks in South County, in Gilroy in particular, are Spanish-speaking folks that may not have documentation. So they're X'd out of that automatically. So I wouldn't even try to apply for FEMA. That's just a no-nonsense thing for me not to apply, because they're not going to get no funding. Secondly, are we trying to create a cohort to go after FEMA funding, or are we going after Santa Clara County funding?
Oh, it'll be everything, and we'll bring in like Community Foundation and others too, because we're talking big dollars. And the county will support it, and the cities will support it as best they can, and it depends on, you know, what happened to their infrastructure and how much they're going to have to rebuild. But yeah, fortunately, you know, the state has got precedent now where they provided funding for undocumented. I think that now we just automatically ask for that. If it's an area, you know, in Santa Clara County, it's just a given that we're going to have that additional funding, and making sure that, you know, individuals that have a child that was born here, they're eligible to apply. And, you know, and if there are concerns about that, because some of the families undocumented and now they're working with FEMA, is that a good idea? You know, we have to show them how we, you know, we try to keep their privacy, or I don't know. I'm going to rely on Araceli or somebody else that's done that. It's like, I don't know how you do that. They, you know,
Yeah.
there are children in the family that are entitled to the benefits. So how do we ensure that the safety of everyone?
And I think that's kind of been the messaging on all the families that have been coming through for the SI applications, is the people that are undocumented.
What's SI mean?
The Storm Assistance for Immigrants. So the families that were undocumented, if the child was documented, we make sure they try to apply, or if they did apply. And it's kind of giving the education, because even if a family if they're all undocumented, yes, they cannot qualify for FEMA. But if a child is born here, you can apply for FEMA. It's just getting them comfortable to actually go forward and move forward with that. So then that's where a lot of our clients are right now, especially in Monterey County and San Juan Bautista and San Luis Obispo. They're asking a lot of questions, and we're helping with appeals in that kind of way because of that. So then, you know, we have split families that are still coming to us, and we're outreaching. I believe we're close to, just in Monterey County, we're close to like 5,000 families that we've already outreached to. And we're getting a good success rate in regards to, you know, going out there or having another case manager that is based out there, to getting them the support. And what we've learned is sometimes, and this is what also we're doing within Catholic Charities USA, is sometimes a disaster is so large that so many people are impacted, they just need one place. So maybe we could even try to build is a cohort is what if we can't go out to Washington where the big disaster happened, but we could start with the intakes and start with all the backup information. We've done it in two different disasters because one of our Catholic charities was everything was just wiped out, and there was a little I believe it was like a 1-bedroom apartment where 3,000 people showed up. So then they created a QR code and they were able to go within different states to do the intakes, get all the backup support, and then automatically those families got gift cards and things like that. It's a whole process of jurisdiction and everything. But even, you know, helping this team get there, because we are large in Santa Clara County. What if something happens in San Francisco? Maybe we can help support San Francisco, you know, just like what we did for Santa Cruz. You know, Marcia and Anna went out there and helped them build up the cadre. And also, you know, we coordinated also with Stockton, helped them build their VOAD. So it's getting the conversation going now, getting something put together now. And then I'll let Daniela, because she has some more client base.
Yeah, adding to what Araceli mentioned, and Marty, to answer your question as well, we have, in order for kind of to get Santa Clara County declared, people did have to submit those FEMA that they were impacted. So we, for example, we had a family out in Gilroy. The mother couldn't apply for FEMA, but she applied with her son's social. You know, still they weren't able to get support. Like Marsha also said, they are more likely to get denied the first try. But because a lot of people were submitting those appeals and requests from FEMA, we actually were able to support that family with our SI program, which is the Storm Assistance for Immigrants. And it's again, because of all those FEMA requests, we were able to get support with DCMP for those who do have socials, and then the SI program for those families who don't. So then again, it's just important to advocate for these families, let them know, keep pushing, let FEMA know you were impacted so that the county can be declared. We were declared really late here in Santa Clara, but again, going back to that, those people need to submit FEMA support that they were greatly impacted here, and we need to have like agencies like us advocating for them so that we can get them funding and some support on rebuilding after the disaster.
So
Yeah, and
Daniela, thank you for that, Daniela. I do have a follow-up question on that. What does that really mean, though, in terms of translations of funding to that particular family? So if that family was impacted and they didn't qualify because the parents are monolingual, or they're monolingual Spanish folks, undocumented, but the child was able to apply, what does that really relate to in terms of funding dollars, amounts? What do they really get? And that's the question that I'm having with FEMA, is really how much money are they really providing the families? I know it might be based on what kind of disaster they might be in, but if they lost their household goods, just their clothing and their valuables, that's one thing. So I'm just thinking outside the box, thinking, is there a better way to assist families in a bigger pot of money that's not tied to any strings and bureaucracy, and that money's there for disaster emergencies that we can give families based on their particular need, opposed to having them getting denied. And I think that's where my focus is at. How can we create a cohort of agencies that says, hey, we got a foundation, we have monies that are tied into this account that we can access immediately and not wait till Santa Clara County is declared a disaster area from FEMA, instead of waiting for that. And then what monies really come down to the individual client or the family. That's important, because I think there's other ways we can raise money to make sure that folks are more effectively provided the services that's needed while they're impacted.
yeah, let's hear what Jenny has to say about that.
You're defining a long-term recovery group. That's the best way for me to say it right now, Marty. You are hired. I'm finding the humor right now. No, your passion is exactly what it's aligned with why a long-term recovery group forms. So you can't rely on FEMA. I have to say that right now. Don't stop. Okay, that's why we exist. We don't rely on FEMA even for documented. Okay, that's why, for example, down here, 805 and DocuFund exists. We've got these amazing groups all over our country who bring in that funding. Our faith-based groups are the ones that bring in the majority of funding for disaster recovery long-term. So that's where we turn our focus. Like I mentioned that Presbyterian Disaster came forward. They gave us $250,000, boom, done for Woolsey. And we didn't get funding from anywhere because we happened the same time that Paradise happened. So that was really unique for us. And Red Cross came forward and funded the admin piece so that we could keep disaster case management working. So what we're trying to do, Marty, funding wise, yes, that's what a long-term recovery group is. We bring those funds in from all of our partners, like your groups and so many others throughout the nation. And that's where the national VOAD comes into play, and those voluntary organizations active in disaster, and the umbrella and the trickle down. And it's why we need to be so strong 365, 24/7, and be ready to stand up a long-term recovery group immediately, because then we justify where the funds are going to be coming. We need some place to funnel them in, and we have to be able to justify why our partner groups are going to bring that money to us. Is that helpful at all, Marty?
Yes, that makes sense. I think I'm thinking back about Hawaii, the Hawaiian fire. I'm thinking back of the folks that are still impacted there in Hawaii, the folks that are still impacted going back when the Woozy fire happened in 2018, the fires that happened in Paradise. Those folks ended up selling their properties that were destroyed. They stole the land. They sold the land because they couldn't wait to rebuild after years of trying to get support from the government, as well as their own insurance policies, their own insurance companies that refused to provide that, trying to play the blame game and wait it out in court with PG&E or whoever. So those are the things that I'm thinking out, and I go, there has to be a better system that we have to put together. And as you said, Jenny, FEMA is not the answer. I think that the answer is finding in our area. And so here's the thing, that other folks get impacted different ways. In Hawaii, they were impacted greatly, but currently our impacts in California or here in Southern right here in South County, the impact is not as severe, if I can say it that way. It's not like a big earthquake or a major fire that wiped out hundreds of homes or whatnot. The impact is a little different. It's still impact, but it's a little different. And in that impact, how do we assess and provide and determine what kind of resources, supportive services that we can provide immediately after that on our end of the woods when the floods happen? How do we provide that services now? And in working with the OEM and say, hey, what do you guys got to offer in the county, and say, hey, what can you do? Even if it's having to use climate money, this climate grants to use to affect change in that area. I think that's what we need to be talking about. And how do we gather that funding base so that way we affect change? The last year, I was in contact with Marcia. We had 17 families that were displaced in Gilroy. They needed a place, shelter to live. They didn't know where to go. The shelter that was supposedly be open in San Martin was open for one day, and then they closed it because nobody came there. Nobody knew how to get there because nobody knew it was open. And then what about all the folks that happened in Morgan Hill that were displaced? They lost all kinds of stuff. So we did our best in providing them not just a gift card, but we provided them actual food, hotel stay, and monies to buy their clothes back that they lost, they didn't have. But that was just a Band-Aid approach. But I think there has to be a bigger way of looking at this in a broader way in our area. I know we talked about other areas, but this area where we're at, we need that kind of a foundation, so that way we can better affect change when things happen to our community.
Yep. Love this. We do need to not count on FEMA. We may not even get a disaster declaration, and we'll have people, and that means we all come together. We share with the community and with the businesses and the funders what the unmet needs are. It's like, how do we bring our community back together? And we are going to do it. We have the resources here. We definitely can do it. So we're running out of time here. you're going to see an invite to the Zoom meeting and then to the in-person meeting that will be happening in April, end of April. And so I hope you can attend, and anybody that's not here that should be here, tell them they should be here next time. And I'll just take any closing comments for the record before we get ready to have that bigger conversation, and in a nice organized manner, because Jenny will just walk us through. But I think all these questions, like who's funding it, you know, who's doing what, we can decide that. And it may change every year. So, you know, it can be flexible, but we just need to know who wants to be involved so that we can start to plan for that. And then how do we bring in others that didn't realize they wanted to be involved, but now they do.
And then Marcia, I'll let you know when, so Catholic Charities is putting some trainings together. And every once in a while, they do allow us to bring other people into the trainings, so that are not part of the deliverables. So when that happens, I'll make sure to invite the group.
Okay. I'm sure we can find funding to do training too, through that long-term recovery, like Jenny said. She already knows where to find money. Okay, anything else?
Well, welcome, Jenny.
Thank you. It's so nice to meet you all. As briefly as it was, I look forward to meeting you and being on more meetings together.
Yep, this is going to be good. And I will sleep much better at night, knowing that this is all ready to stand up when we need it.
Thank you, everybody.
Jackie said she hired a recovery coordinator. So that's a recovery coordinator for county infrastructure.
Sorry. No, for all things emergency management. So we have a recovery coordinator who will assist, and they have actually worked directly with Catholic Charities recently. So it's Parachute Najab, and their dedication is all disaster recovery.
Okay. So our long-term recovery group will be separate from the counties because we're helping the community and you're rebuilding the community, and we're doing it. But yeah, definitely she would be invited to the meetings because we always have government there. I mean, everybody that has input is at the meetings because we want to make sure that everyone has the same information and that we're maximizing what we can do for the people. So that's awesome. Okay. I'll put that on my notes. Anything else? Greg had to run. I knew that.
And just to be clear, we should be working together, not separately, because the missions are together is to rebuild our community back. So, so we want to be able to support all and any of your efforts in the long-term recovery phase.
I'll have you work with Jenny to make that seamless. All right. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. This was just good conversation. I wish we could just talk like this all the time. But we'll feel free to send any other thoughts that you have to me so that we can add them to our discussion list. And we will see you next month.
Thank you, Marcia.